Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my own little warrior priest, my own little member of the Empire, my own little ally, not in the guild with me, but he can come along anyways. It's Tom. How you doing, Tom?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, as we discuss the free people, the one, the only Mr. Paul Conti. How you doing, sir?
Fabulously well, sir. Pleasure to be here as always.
Hey, it's good to have you back on, man. I was looking back through, and we've discussed free peoples before, but it was a year and a half ago, more than that. And there has been a lot of change, let's just say, with the free people in that time.
Yeah. Just a little bit.
A little bit. Little thing called the GHB 2017. Well, frankly, and 2016 happened, by the by, because we recorded the last time we talked about these guys. It was free, even the 2016 one.
Yep.
So it was a while back. And we're going to talk them through tonight as I fight back a sneeze. Holy Moses, that was a big one. But of course, first, before we get to all of that, we're going to talk about some news. So, Tom, what do you got?
So we have a rumor engine.
That we do.
And
Yes,
you
we
know, I feel pretty confident about this one.
You feeling confident? All right,
We're
here we go.
definitely dealing with elves.
Sure, this is the time.
We have it. I've
All
cracked the case.
Mm-hmm. It is the Elvish engine. Yeah, I can see that with this Adeptus
the
Mechanicus
Elvish-
symbol on it.
The Elvish Soul Engine.
Mm-hmm. Nope, that tracks.
Is that really the Adeptus Mechanicus symbol? And the reason why is I've scraped a whole lot of those off of that terrain. And normally the skull isn't fully formed.
Yeah, it's like the true Adeptus Mechanicus symbol is like a half skull.
Yep.
But I mean, it's
So-
close.
Yes, it's very close. It is genetically related somehow.
Yeah. So here's the real question. I mean, obviously it's 40K.
Yeah.
The only question that's in my mind is this a model or is this terrain?
I think it's actually a model.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it might be terrain. Like, let me say this. Like, it could very well be terrain. It has all the hallmarks of terrain. But I'd like to have them surprise us with an actual model.
I think I'm going to go with new AOS faction. Just to throw it out there. No idea what it is.
Bold prediction.
Bold prediction. Just going to roll the dice on this one. New AOS faction that is somehow skull and machine related.
So it is the new human faction of Free Peoples. That is the whole point of it is to engineer a greater person, a greater human to serve Sigmar, and they're adding mechanical parts to them. It is the predecessors of I don't know. I got nothing.
You're stretching it awful thin.
Yeah, this is 40K. Sorry.
Clearly, they live on a red plane and wear a lot of robes, plate themselves with mechanical parts, and worship the Sigmar Omnissiah. Look, I mean, I think this is a big piece of terrain. The plastic on it looks like a big piece of terrain.
Yeah,
it has that sort of softness to it around some of the
soft. Yeah,
that make it look like and feel like terrain. The size of the bolts and things like that. The softness of the detail of this skull, of this entire thing. It really just feels like a lot of the terrain kits when you get them. The plastic has a different feel because it's made in a different place, made of different material, all that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, and to get that kind of detail on a skull like that, I think it would have to be fairly large.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're somewhat zoomed in here, certainly, right, as usual. But yeah, I feel like and they've made a bunch of industrial terrain. People really responded to it and like it well. You've got Necromunda, so you could do more industrial terrain, and everybody would be happy with it. So
I have more on the way.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, it is a very nice set of terrain.
So, I mean, that's my general feeling. I would love to be proven wrong. I'd love this to be like some big engine as part of a new giant-sized mechanical kit. I love big kits like that. So,
I mean, it could be new Ironweld Arsenal kit.
Seems like it's not going to be that, but hey, anything is possible. But like the Knight Titan is one of my favorite, sort of 40K kits of all time. So something else big and giant mechanical like that would be pretty sweet. I'd dig that. So, all right, well, there you go. Time will tell on that one for sure. But it probably won't matter to us much anyways. I don't buy a lot of the 40K terrain, so
you don't buy terrain.
That's true.
Well, you buy lots of terrain. It just isn't used as terrain.
That's a good point. I do buy lots of terrain. It just ends up becoming basing kits. So
you kill me. Sorry.
It's gonna be a fantastic new basing kit for Vince.
Exactly.
Ugh. Okay. Whatever. Ridiculous. How about the Black Library is doing their new Advent calendar this year. They announced that. That's super exciting. There's 20. It's 20. They're doing basically it's a 24-day December 1st through the December 24th set of releases where they're releasing a new product every single day. And it's either like a full audio drama or it's like a short. And you can either buy them individually or do the whole bundle and save a quote Land Raiders worth of money.
You do the whole bundle and save a bundle.
Yes, that's right.
That would have been the better byline for them, I think.
Yeah, that does seem. It seems like it writes itself, but here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, so that's. Did you guys pick up was there an Advent calendar last year, or was that the year before that they did the Advent calendar?
They've done one both years. Yeah, they've done an Advent calendar. It's just different stuff, different years. Right?
Yeah.
One of the things they've classically released right at the end of the year is the top models of the year list.
Oh yeah,
right. And I'll be really interested to see what that is this year.
Oh, I can tell you which one it is this year.
I mean, it's going to be like 40K kits all the way down, but nonetheless, like, I mean, who knows? We don't know how they make that list.
I know what the top model was. I just do.
Okay.
It's the Lord of Change. I'll put money that the Lord of Change will be the #1 model. That kit has not only sold bundles and shows up in both 40K and AOS, but that kit also has won a number of painting competitions.
Sure. No, that's a good point. He's a beautiful model.
Didn't Magnus come out this year as well?
Nope. That was last year. That was last year. Yep.
And he made the list last year.
Yeah, Magnus. Yep.
Yeah.
Which was impressive because he was pretty late in the year.
Yeah, he was November, I think, of last year. Yep. But said, go ahead.
I think he would probably, like, if they included like all kits, he's probably on the list for this year too. Like if you walk, like I walked around like a 40K GT and it's like every third table had one.
Right. Yeah. And keep in mind, it's not like the top list is restricted to models released in this current calendar year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like last year, on the list was like the Space Marine
and Archeon.
Like just the 5 standard Space Marines, you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah, that's true. That's true. That said, I still think the Lord of Change is going to be on there. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if like the Ironclad was on there as well.
Could be. I mean, Mortarian's obviously.
They said, on one of the recent reports, they said that that KO. This was a rumor that I saw a while back that we didn't report on. That KO in one of the meetings and one of the things that KO sold very well. And in fact, that there was already talks of doing another wave of releases. That like when they were talking to investors, they said, it sold well enough that it would certainly warrant another wave or something like that. Yeah,
I mean the problem with that is even expedited. That's like 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. Yeah. Like I'm not suggesting that that's coming soon. That's why I never really mentioned it. But yeah, I mean we probably will get another wave of KO. Now, whether will be like Skyport specific or what that'll be, who knows? But
Well, I can only hope they come out with a set of really super powerful rules and then change them all like 2 weeks later on you. It would be my favorite thing ever if that happened again.
And rules that don't match what's in the box, so that you go out and buy tons and tons of boxes just to get the bits.
I hate,
and then
I hate you guys.
I think I would love it. It would be great. No, I like certainly they could do another one. Yes. I mean, one of the things they said at Nova was that you know, KO sold very well and they didn't see much of a change in sales, if anything, when the rules changed.
Yeah.
Didn't have an impact on the sales of the kits, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, KO is still really good. Like, even with those changes, they went from like tier 0.5 to tier 1. Like, they're still really good.
So I'd like to answer.
When you play them one way, they are indeed good.
They are.
I'd like to address a question in the comments.
Okay.
Doom and Darkness is watching and asked if I'm wearing an apron. Well, first of all, I always wear an apron. Like I have had an apron on in like almost every show. It's just been my traditional apron, which was like a green apron.
Yes.
Yeah. I had stolen. Obviously, I have a new one here. And the reason I have a new one is because I have a fantastic wife. I'm very lucky. And I'll sit up here so you can see that. You see, is that backwards on the screen?
Oh, no. That's cute.
Yeah. There you go.
Is, like, I want to hug your wife for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was my birthday gift. As was mentioned, last Wednesday was my birthday. So, yeah, she surprised me with that. So, to replace my old falling apart apron.
That is an excellent gift. That's fantastic.
Yes, it was pretty nice.
Yeah. So
what else we got, man? It's a slow news week.
So we reported on it once, and there's another kind of we're getting it from another source that GW's been investing in infrastructure. And now we're getting some numbers to that from a different source and suggesting that they're adding about 50% of the amount of mold machines that they're using towards the end of the year. So start of next year. So like we're talking like
so you're saying they're increasing their total capacity once they get running will be 150% of what it is now. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Wow. That's crazy.
Which required expanding their entire workshop. These things take time, but it's coming close to completion. I said, if I were a smart man looking at the timing and supposed new releases I keep hearing in here, it's worth a fair guess that they're getting ready to churn out heavy amounts of models, both old and new.
Excellent. That's what I like to hear. We've been, you know, as we talked about last week, it's been more or less a what can we do that doesn't require new models to be made for the past 6 months. I would just love it if they just hit us with the deluge. Like, I'm down for it, man. Let's do it. Make it rain.
Yeah.
I mean, as if it hasn't been already.
Well, I mean, look, I want to see, I'd love to see, you know, some new, like a full new army. I want to know what the next big army is. I want those elves to hit. I want to see some new sweet death stuff. We know we've got the Malign Portents coming, which was another news item I'm sure you were going to talk about. Right, that the White Dwarf next month, you know, talked about the Malign Portents coming.
Which I've seen, by the way. I've had my hands on that new White Dwarf.
The one that, like, which one? The one now or the one for
the one
January?
that's coming? The one for February, or the one for December, like the Christmas issue with the new cards and stuff like that. And it's
I'm talking about the January 28th.
Oh yeah, but in that new issue that's dropping this weekend, it had Malign Portents for January. So like very early on this next year, we're launching immediately into Malign Portents.
Oh yeah, it's clear that they're just going to be off to the races with this, like, right away.
Right.
So I'm excited. Like,
so the question is,
I'm excited.
Do we get
both of those models?
Do we get a last minute Christmas show from them where they're like, oh, by the way, this is coming in 3 weeks. See you later. Like they did last year with Zinch. Do you remember that when they were like, they gave us like that 2 weeks of like radio silence after they dropped like a Zinch bomb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do remember that. I hope so. Yeah, that'd be great. And everybody was kind of angry, and it was like my favorite thing ever because they just said, here's a bunch of stuff that isn't enough information for you to know. See you in 2 weeks. It was wonderful. I hope they do that again. Absolutely. Only this time, like, make it all about the Malign Portents stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Nurgle. I think they're going to do the same thing with Nurgle again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that Nurgle's going to come that early in Malign Portents. I could be wrong.
I hope you're right, Paul. I want to see them just like drop some Nurgle thing and just be like, well, later, suck on that, Tom, for 2 weeks. Deal with it.
Yeah, you just want that to happen because you want me to suffer.
That is correct. Yeah. I thought I made that abundantly clear.
Yes.
In my previous sentence, but sure, we can put a pin on it if you want. Yes. I would like your Christmas present to be suffering. Yes, Tom, that is what I'm saying.
But in reality, it's not really suffering because it's just angst about what's to come that he's going to spend all of his money on.
Well, he can't handle that. That's why I enjoy it, because that kind of angst really kills him. So
no, well, not only that, like that's not even a matter because I've spent all my money. You guys will see this next week. I have a box coming that is the Lord of all boxes. My distributor isn't sure that he can get it in a single box, so we may be doing multiple shipments. In which I capitalized on the Black Friday, some clear out stock stuff that people were doing.
Because you can't help yourself.
That is a true statement.
I am very angry. My only Black Friday story, I'll tell mine real quick, just because you mentioned it, is I was refreshing Kingdom Death all night at midnight.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because they always throw stuff up.
Yep.
And so like it was like 12:20, and nothing had changed. And so I was like, oh, well, they must not be doing it this year. And I kind of gave up. And then I went back to it at like 1:30, and everything was like all the stuff I wanted was sold out. That's not true. Half the stuff I wanted was sold out. So I did get the other half of the stuff I wanted. Everything is still available for UK. So, you know,
I have so much Kingdom Death stuff coming that I'm like, I looked at it and I'm like, nope, nope.
But let me just point out, that's how you do a Black Friday thing. Kingdom Death does it right. Yeah. It is, you got to show up. You got to show up at that time, like at midnight, and it's like 50% or more off of everything. Yeah. Right? That's how you do it. That made me a buyer. I see all these Black Friday stuff that's like an extra 5%. I'm like, delete. I don't care. Get that crap out of here. Like that is not motivating a purchase for me out of something I'm not going to buy. You tell me 50%, now you have my attention. So that's all I'm saying.
Now, that said, I mean, technically distributors for GW can't do that, but because of the contract.
I don't need it to be GW. There's plenty of other models I'd like to buy. I'm not just talking about GW stuff.
Yeah.
This whole story was about Kingdom Death.
That's true. True.
So, anywho. All right. So yes, I'm excited for the Malign Portents. I'm really excited for that War Queen. That's the one I'm looking
for. The Dark Oath one.
So, Yep. Yeah. She'll be like, I mean, she's going right in the army. Cause I mean, I've got my female corn army. So I mean, obviously she's joining the crew. I'll probably pick up a couple of her just so I've got one to play with and one to, she seems like she could be fun for competition. So
maybe depends on her pose.
I'll have to get a closer look at her.
Yep.
And determine. The quality of the sculpt looks good. All those individual character sculpts have been really good recently. So, anyway, do we have any other news items?
Not really. I mean,
all right. It's a slow news week. It's okay. It's all right. That's
like
okay.
We have the new Celestant and stuff like that, but we covered that last week, didn't we?
Sure. Yes. So let's talk about some pick of the week.
We don't have any real information on yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk about some pick of the week.
Sorry, the Celestant with a shield. That is the information.
Oh, that's fine.
Yes.
Yes, it is the new. We talked about him last week, but we'll mention him again here. New open face Lord Celestant, who the best comparison I saw for him was the Tommy Wiseau comparison.
Yep.
He does look like Tommy Wiseau.
Yep. Or
of the Room fame.
Or Duncan MacLeod.
His face is too wide. Like for Duncan MacLeod. That's the problem. It
is a little
what's his name? Yeah, the actor has a very thin face.
Yeah.
So
it just kind of reminds me of like Malibu Stacy. It's like, oh, it's just a new Lord Celestin, but he's a shield.
yes. I mean, what I love about it is like, first of all, I don't care. Any new models, fine, whatever.
Okay.
They're making new models, great. I understand people want a whole Death Army or a whole Elf Army. You have to understand that a single Stormcast character does not replace a Death release. They weren't like, oh, we're not doing a Death release because we're gonna put out this single Stormcast character. Like that's not equivalent. That's not how this works.
That was not the conversation in any boardroom anywhere.
Right. They were like, well, we can either do a whole new army for Death, or we can put out a single Stormcast hero. Like, that's not equivalent. So, no. I mean, they clearly just, like, had very limited runs, and they already have a Death hero coming out in, like, 3 weeks, probably, or 4 weeks, I guess. Whatever. January, right?
And they wanted something archetypical for AOS, and yeah, no, like there's no question in my mind that that's what was going on. That said, I think I understand everybody's frustration. Oh, by the way, I have a theory about this. I remember sending you a message on this.
I'm ready.
I take that back. I don't think that we covered this last week. This was in between weeks that news dropped.
Okay.
That was like last.
Well,
Thursday.
we're talking about it now. That's fine.
So
we're talking about it now.
We are. So I actually think, by the way, I have a theory about what they're doing with these Stormcast releases, because this is not the first variant pose. Okay. Like we have multiple trumpeters, we have multiple who are the other ones? I know we have is it multiple Vexilors or something? Like we have multiple of a couple different of the Stormcast heroes. Okay.
Yeah,
and now we have multiple Castellans.
Yep.
I'm wondering if we are building
Celestin, but that's fine.
Ourselves.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we're building a volume, like a stable of models. Okay. Like we've long talked about AOS being this, at least AOS, like whatever this first edition is, being this transitionary period, this interim period to wherever we're going.
Long transition, apparently, but okay.
Sure, that's fine. I mean, you always have to have a plan. And what I would anticipate is that I think where we're moving is we are moving to a true division between the storm hosts, like a material division between the storm hosts in the next big AOS, next big Sigmar release, whenever that happens, whether it's a new edition of AOS or whatever. Such that what we'll have is, I think we'll have this, we'll have a core, much like Space Marine, of like models that go in any army that can be painted any way. And then you'll have things that are specific to certain storm hosts, characters like Knave. You'll have things that are like, and then maybe even the multiple sculpts will then tend towards different storm hosts. And so those will become the default.
Saying like harder divisions between the storm hosts and the same, the same way as the Space Marines or something like that?
Yes. But you can't do that right away. You can't do that out of the gate. Like you can do it in a soft incentive, but you need to actually build up your volume of miniatures, your actual range before you create those hard divisions. And I wonder if that's what we're doing over these couple of years, is creating this volume of, staple Stormcast.
Well, I mean, one, maybe. Two, it's ironic you're saying that, as the announcement of the of that Stormcast hero was in the same announcement with a Blood Angel specific lieutenant and a Dark Angel specific lieutenant, right? Timed to their Codex release for the Primaris Marines, like the Primaris lieutenant version of those two.
Yep.
Which is those two are exactly what you're talking about, right? Like those two models where you take the generic form Primaris Marine and you have it specifically set to be for one faction, i.e. Blood Angels or Dark Angels.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not crazy what you're describing. I think it would be a while before we walked into that kind of situation.
Yes, like when they released that final edition of that Super Collector's Edition for Stormcast last year, or this year rather, at the beginning of the year. I really do think that's our last major Stormcast release for probably 2 years.
Sure.
2 to 3 years. And then Like we may have like Deathcast or something like that, but those aren't going to be the same faction. Like that's not going to be the same faction book. But when we get our next big release, it would not surprise me if what we end up with is true divisions between the storm hosts.
I mean, that'd be a big shift.
It would be. And so interestingly, the coloration discussions, they may be trying to hedge, like they may be trying to curb like people's frustrations down the road where they've painted these collections one direction, even though they may want to go a different direction when that final division happens, when that harder division happens.
Well, I mean, if they went some direction like that, it would have to be like the culmination of something happening narratively. And moreover, they'd still have to keep like 80% of the line being completely interchangeable.
Generic. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Or higher, frankly. I would just like to point out in that same release, by the way, they also had the new re-release sculpt of Sly Marbo, one of my favorite rip-off characters of all time, coming back for 40K. So I was happy to see him come back. But I mean, it's pretty tinfoily hatty, but I mean, look, I don't know that their future plans are that written in stone. I really don't think so. Sure. Like because that would be a stupid way to do it. Right? Like so in my world, we talk because like I develop a product, you talk about ice, slush, water in your roadmap.
Yep.
And in other words, like the closest thing to you is ice. It's the firmest. And as you get out farther in time, it becomes more liquid, more fluid. Yep. Right. The point being is that you can still change and pivot if something becomes the necessary move.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I'm sure there's a whiteboard somewhere with like the 3 and 5 year vision plan. And out there's a bunch of post-it notes of what they could do. And one of them is split up the Stormcast. One of them is Stormcast become chaos. One of them is Stormcast become death. You know, and like down the line. There's going to be like 10 different post-it notes. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like, they don't know which ones are true. I mean, like, I love how we all assume that they just have this like long master plan that stretches out for years. Like, no, that would be dumb. Like, I'm sure they have ideas and they plant seeds.
Sure.
Right. But the reality is they probably do it like J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter books, where she just like would plant a ton of seeds and then just come back on random threads and make them important later. Right.
Indeed.
So, yeah, the other thing I wanted to touch on since we were about to leave news, but then you reminded me of this thing. The other thing I wanted to touch on is I wanted to talk about the Slayer Sword winner from the most recent last weekend Golden Demon, because it was David Soper again, and it's gorgeous, and I find this very funny because I follow David, and it's his second year winning a Slayer Sword with a Nurgle model, which is humorous. But I had seen this and absolutely loved everything about it. And so read his whole article about creating it. And I had added some new paints to my Christmas list because of what he talked about using on this. So I thought that was very interesting. But this is gorgeous. Like, again, he is a masterful artist. And he's the one who did Gut Rot Spew, right? Last year. The same guy. And I love everything about this. The coloration, the subtle hues. This is masterwork right here.
Sounds like you need to paint up a Nurgle army.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a reason Nurgle wins a lot of painting competitions, because it requires an extremely high amount of skill to do well. Because it also gives you a chance to show off everything. Yeah. Everything.
Yeah. Like weathering and the whole deal.
Yeah, and damage and conversions and everything, right? Like it is all in.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, the best clean marine, like you have to paint the best clean marine with Nurgle and then screw it up.
Sure. I
mean, that's what it is, right? So like you have to paint very bravely with Nurgle. But anyway, I wanted to highlight this because congratulations to David. This is an absolutely gorgeous model. I saw a lot of the winning entries. Richard Gray took gold for his Terminators, his Nurgle Terminators. So another Nurgle unit, which were stupid good because Richard Gray is one of the best freehand, has some of the best freehand in the world. And the cloaks on his Termies were Like they made my brain hurt when I looked at them. The detail, because those are not huge models, and he had these like beautiful tentacled skulls. It's gorgeous work. Anyway, check them out. I'm sure I didn't see the Golden Demon site get updated yet, but I'm hoping it gets updated soon with all the new winners. So there you go.
And they announced the new model to paint for Golden Demon, the monopose non-conversion.
Yeah, the Night Quester.
The night 2018. So you ready to paint a Stormcast, Vince?
I will tell you honestly, because I've painted that model before with a version.
I know you have.
And I love painting that model. I think it's a fantastic model. It's very open.
Yep.
Which is nice. But it's dynamic. Now, you can't convert, right? You got to like the trick
it
with
has
that.
to be out of the box, unless you're
out of the box
painting it on the sprue.
Well, now that guy did that, you can never do that again, right? Like, cute trick. Here's your finalist pin. Thank you. That's the one time anybody's allowed to do that.
Yes.
Right. So, I'll be into like. I thought about it. Like if we don't see a Golden Demon announcement coming to the US, then I'm probably going to try to make my way there in 2018. But that's a heck of a trip. I mean, whatever.
Yep.
Not using the miles for anything else. So whatever. Doesn't cost anything to go there. Just, hotel, but whatever. But that's fine. All right. So now are we done with the news? Have we now finished the news, Tom?
Sure.
Pick of the week. All right, Paul. What is your pick of the week, sir? Go.
All right. So I have actually a really fairly unusual one that is really only very tangentially related to wargaming in any way.
I wonder if he's going to get ahead of you, Tom. All right, go ahead.
Shit.
No, this is like totally out of left field.
All right.
So I through browsing through the YouTubes, ran across a podcast called Hardcore History.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you guys.
Yep.
I know it. Yes, it's awesome.
It is. I have been just like binging it nonstop, and actually, like since he focuses so much on military history, it's actually given me some like inspiration, thoughts, ideas for Warhammer, which is really awesome, really in depth. Awesome history stuff. I think his most recent 10 or so podcasts are available for free, and then the back library is like $2 an episode or something like that. And they're like 3 to 6 hour episodes, so they're well worth the $2. And they are just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I just learned about it recently. Actually, it's funny you mention it. I learned about it at Holy Havoc. Somebody mentioned it, and I came back and I was like, I listened to one episode and I was like hooked. Same thing you did. Like, you're talking about binging it, man. I'm all in for it. It's a great podcast.
Yeah. I literally almost within, I want to say, a span of 4 days, I went through the entire World War I series, which I think the totality of it is 26 hours.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's long. The Roman one is what I'm all about. Pretty recently that he did the Rome in Britain one or whatever. That one.
The Celtic Holocaust.
There you go. Yes, that one. Thank you. I couldn't think of the exact name. I shouldn't forget a name like that, but yes.
Yes. So yeah, that is definitely my pick. That is fantastic. That is just so much good ancient and medieval history, so much good military history.
Well, and also as you mentioned, look, people are always looking for stuff to paint to, right? Like, I'm a big believer in having something on while you're painting. That podcast is perfect because you can get in a pretty good marathon sesh on a single episode. So yeah, there you go. All right, I dig that pick. I'll link out to the podcast because I agree. Everybody, if you have any even passing interest in history, it's a pretty great listen. So rock and roll. All right, Tom, go with your pick.
So mine is unrelated to Warhammer.
This is the week where apparently no one picks a Warhammer. So go ahead.
Vince, tell me I'm wrong. This is the best thing that happened today, even better than our show. I think you described our show. I think you described it as looking into the face of God.
It was like somebody opened the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have been hiding under a rock all day, let me tip you off to the fact that the Avengers Infinity War trailer dropped today.
Yeah, I did.
Last I checked, at like 11 hours, it's already hit 26 million views.
Wow.
Yep.
And it's amazing. I don't know what else to say. Like, if you haven't watched it, stop watching the show, pause our show, go watch it, and then come back. Like, it's worth not being live for you to see those 3 minutes. Like, Yep.
It's amazing. It truly is. It is maybe the best trailer I've ever seen. And largely that is because of all the buildup we've had to it, right? You couldn't replicate that because it wasn't just what's in that trailer. It's I'm bringing 10 years of emotional baggage to that trailer, right? So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, and like, yeah, I could go on. Vince and I have dissected this. Like, we spent like an hour talking about this today.
We did, yeah.
And
we're not going to talk about it here because that's not what the.
But like the beats of the movie, like what they clearly revealed, why people are not in certain scenes, and like Vince and I could do our own show just on that unpacking that trailer. Yeah.
Wait, our new trailer breakdown show. Like that's not. We need it because God knows the world needs another one of those.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So funny enough, I actually haven't watched that yet.
Yeah, you can. Well, I'll go get coffee. You can do that right now.
My pick of the week will bring us back to something wargaming related, though again, it's not strictly Warhammer, but I really was excited to see it. So friend of the show, the Terrain Tutor, just put out a new video today, actually. That was, I guess it was like late last night, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Today-ish in my world, when I discovered it, on his sort of like top 10 tips for working with MDF buildings. And so it's like, as somebody, I just got some new MDF terrain. Okay. I ordered the some orky terrain because I am going to need my own I'm going to need my own board for Holy Wars. I can't free ride on you anymore. So I have to make my own board. So I bought some orky terrain, a watch tower, and some other little icons and stuff. And it's all MDF. So I was very excited to see that because he kind of just walks you through like his top 10 tips for assembling the for like prepping it, assembling it. And he had some really good tips I would have never thought of. Like, I was very impressed. Some of it was a little more obvious, perhaps, but some of it was like really super clever. I'll give you one to sort of spoil it, but you should go watch the rest because this is what it's like. He talked about how, like, certainly, like when you're putting MDF together, you know, and you're using glue, like white glue, you're often going to want to band stuff or, you know, tie it or whatever to keep it tight. Yeah.
Yep.
And he's like, and that's fine. But if you can't, or if the piece is too thin or there's nowhere to put a rubber band, magnets.
What?
Magnets. And he pulls out like 52 neodymium magnets, like the bigger ones.
Yep.
And he puts one on each side of the terrain that he's trying to press together. And they're like, because it's the big like half-inch one. So they're super, and it's 52, so they're like super strong.
Yep.
And it just clamps and sits there and holds it. And I was like, oh my God, that is such a genius idea.
Genius. Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, it's all stuff like that. So it's obviously, I mean, the guy has just an insane wealth of knowledge on making terrain. And since I'm going to need to assemble all that, I thought, and paint all that, I really haven't done much MDF terrain. Like most of the terrain kits I've put together, of the few I've done, were all the sort of plastic ones, right? I found all of his tips very, very helpful. So I will link that video down there. Go check it out. It is a great intro. If you don't know the Terrain Tutor, you should check him out. If you have any interest in making terrain at all, the man puts out so much content. And it was just a really, really solid video. So there you go. The magnet one has a secondary trick that's even cooler. Okay, I'm not gonna spoil it. I want you to watch the video to see it. But it was when he did it, I was like, holy crap, that is freaking genius. Like if the magnets were brilliant, this was freaking genius. So anyway,
Wow.
there you go. All right, so that's picks. Let's talk hobby time. Paul, what are you working on, man? What's on your desk, buddy?
One of the most tedious projects that I will ever be tackling, but it is apropos to this evening's feature segment discussion.
Mm-hmm.
I am working on rebasing all of my free guild dudes that are on squares. I'm actually putting some guys on rounds right now as we speak. And changing over the weaponry on a whole bunch of my what were previously halberdiers to be swordsmen. So I've got a total of 40 new swordsmen that are going to that I just finished rebasing all of them onto rounds. Mm-hmm. They all need to get new arms and shields put on them. And then get painted. I've got 40 handgunners that need to get rebased, 30 greatswords that need to get rebased, and a few other miscellaneous models here and there. And I've got a fairly substantial painting project of 50 swordsmen, about 10 halberdiers, a couple of men-at-arms that are going to be used as counts as spearmen,
mm-hmm.
And then a couple of other miscellaneous units, and then 10 more handgunners that need to get painted, all in preparation of finally getting off my butt and actually putting together the necessary models to field a Free People army in the GHB 2017 world.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a big project. I've used my psychic powers and I foresee many pantaloons in your future. All the pantaloons.
There's 50 pantaloons on my desk right now in front of me. You can't see them, but they're right here.
Awesome. Well, we're going to deep dive obviously into that, and we're going to talk about all those units. Good, bad.
Oh, yes.
We're going to talk about allegiance abilities, strengths, weaknesses. We're going to do the whole rundown.
Oh yeah, and why I feel the need to own 80 swordsmen.
Yeah, indeed. The last time I ran it, I played some Free Peoples 2 weeks ago, and my Exalted Keeper of Secrets went in and sliced her way through. Like a Mystic Shielded double piling in Exalted Keeper of Secrets went in and sliced her way through an entire unit of 40 halberdiers, which was fun. I enjoyed that. That Exalted Keeper, you got to watch out for her. So 500 points, but hey, what do you do? Okay, Tommy. Hobby time. What's on your desk, brother?
I am swiftly approaching the tedious part of the ironclad. I see it coming. I'm working on my
rivets. Is that
so I can see it coming. I have my edge highlighting for the whole ship to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got all my washes.
That's fine. That's just fun.
That's fun. The edge highlighting, but then and all the base coating for all the bodies are done. So my crew will probably be done tonight. But I'm just looking at the hundreds of rivets that's on that ship, knowing that I have to go in, I have to base all of them, and then I need to wash around all of them, and then re-highlight all of them. And so I'm probably gonna do 1,000+ rivet touches here in the next couple days, and that's gonna happen.
Nothing wrong with that, man. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Builds character.
So I'm getting close. Is the answer?
Doing 1,000 rivets puts hair on your chest. That's what that's.
Yeah. I did not count the rivets on my frigate, so I am going to indeed count the rivets on the ironclad.
That just seems like it's adding more time to an already tedious task.
Well,
Like, you could probably just Google how many. Well, we did this
no,
last
I
time.
did.
And nobody
We
had
did,
the answer,
and
but who
nobody had the
knows?
answer. Right. So
You know?
I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one from our community that generates that answer.
All right. Well, there you go. We'll hot you do. The long unsolved mystery is finally answered.
So, and then
I
I'm
look
finally
forward to
getting the Warhammer World mini painted up, the special bugman for the deck of the ship.
Yeah.
So, I'm enjoying painting him. I'm trying my new skin color scheme for my KO as well. So it'll be fun.
Cool. Very good. For me, I am working on this girl right here. Obviously, I didn't get a chance. I did like a bunch of figures over the weekend at my marathon game, just because I needed something I could idly paint while I was marathon role playing. So I got just like a character for each Grand Alliance done out of some Bones figures and some other stuff. So, but now I'm back to this girl, and she's coming along very nicely. She's almost ready to go. Just a few small little details.
How's that bandana
to go? Better now. I finally managed to get it to somewhere that I don't hate, because like now it's darker.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure it's appropriate, but we'll see. But obviously I did the tutorial around denim. I ended up like there's a lot of little tiny freehand stuff on here, like designs on her hat. She has a plaid shirt on. Her boots have like a pattern in them and little stuff like that. But I was thinking about doing the plaid tutorial, but I wasn't honestly sure how well the plaid was going to come out when I started.
Sure.
Given that she has, it's not a flat surface. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it came out okay, but so I'm going to try to do a plaid tutorial sometime in the future, because it is a really fun design. Although, again, not one you get to do very often, but I'm really liking how she's coming out. I think she's gorgeous, and I'm still very thankful to Dallas for getting me this fig. So
nice.
I've been very happy with it. I'm hoping I'll have her finished up this weekend. I think another like, yeah, probably another 30 or so hours, and I can probably get her done. So not too bad. That feels.
But you know what gets to happen if you do a tutorial on plaid? Then we get somebody out there will have the tools to make an orc army all in kilts.
Yeah, exactly. Like the advantage of doing plaid is it does give you like the kilt, the tartan pattern, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's the same because it's mostly the same technique. The tartan's a little different than plaid, but it's similar. Yep. I agree, and that's actually useful. Like that is something that you could very easily fit into it. I would love to see people green stuff some full like tartan style or whatever, tartan kilts or whatever across like some iron jaws across their armor. That would be super sweet.
Yep.
I could dig that. That would look cool. That seems like a lot of work, but I mean, that's
Steve Herner, get on it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Steve did his entire Dr. Doom Stormcast force, and that worked out pretty well. So hey, why not? There you go. All right. So let's talk about Free People. So the Free People obviously got a big update in GHB 2017. It's not the largest of army factions, but it's also not the smallest, I would say. They have an interesting mix of capabilities between melee and shooting, and I think they have interesting ally potential that makes them be able to play in all phases. So unlike some other armies that even with their allies still can't necessarily get into certain phases very well.
Like the Dwarven Alliance is a perfect example of this. Like I don't get to play in the hero phase. Like
you're just KO, you mean?
Yeah, like KO and all the dwarves. Like they don't get a spell, they don't get magic.
Right.
Like it just doesn't exist for them.
Right, exactly, because none of their allies have. Like, if you want it, you've got to just go generic order and say, well, I guess I didn't need that Fire Slayer stuff, right, or whatever. Yep. So, which I maybe is appropriate for dwarves, I don't know, but there it is, whatever it is. But obviously, the Free Peoples have, I think, some really interesting units, and they have some very unique options. And so, I thought we would do a little deep dive. So I want to, obviously, Paul, you're gonna lead us through a lot of this discussion. You're gonna be our tour guide in the land of the free people. You're gonna take us
to the former empire, the shadow of what it once was.
That's right. You're gonna be the one taking us to Flavor Town here. So
yes,
the question is, let's start at the very beginning. If you had to give sort of an overview, what is the Free Peoples and sort of general picture of what you think they're about, kind of sketch some strengths and weaknesses, what would be your pitch about them and the general consistency of them?
Well, I think the word you just used, consistency, is exactly what they're good at. They have a lot of things that give you +1 to hit, command ability that can also give you +1 to wound. So a lot of their models are already hitting and wounding on pretty decent numbers. So there's a lot of occasions where you can get your guys down to 2 up to hit, 3 up to wound, 2 up to hit, 2 up to wound, in both melee and shooting. So they are extremely consistent with their attacks, and also with some of their units with their defense as well, having, very good armor saves on, your Free Guild Guard with sword and shield, come stock with a 4-up reroll 1s, so they're basically the same as Liberators for 20 less points. And with their combinations of abilities, they are very resistant to battle shock. So even when they are losing troops, they're not bleeding out much more to battle shock very frequently. So they're, I think, very, very consistent, is definitely the word I would use for it. With the changes we got in GHB 2017 compared to where we were at before, they were one of the allegiances that lost the most war scrolls out going into the compendium. There were tons and tons. I think it was over 30 war scrolls that had the Free People's keyword previously that no longer have it. And a lot of
the loss of Bretonnia.
Right. A lot of it was due to the loss of Bretonnia and loss of all of the special characters out of the Empire. Right. Most of them sucked. But, we lost a number of things that were really good. We also lost a battalion, which was like what I was using all the time, the Brotherhood of Knights battalion. Mm-hmm. We lost Empire Knights. We lost basically all of our cavalry. So it's now very much a foot-slogging, large model count infantry army for the most part.
Well, now hold on. I want to push back on that just a little bit.
Like, you have Demi, you have the Griffin.
Well, I was going to say, you've got Demi's, Pistoliers, and Outriders still. So, I mean, there are still 3 Cav units in there. But I take your meaning. Losing all of the knightly orders, right. was a big sort of chunk of what traditionally was seen as sort of a part of the Empire or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, the heavy knight list is really difficult to do now. And Demi-gryphs, without the Brotherhood of Knights battalion, also lost a lot of their punch.
Yeah, I mean, Demis are interesting. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into them in the unit section, but they are, I think,
a trap.
Like, I don't necessarily agree. I think they are. I think they should. I think they're pig-like. That's what I'll say.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, and so I think
a mobile amble.
Yeah, I like. They're not as. We'll talk about it.
Or
we'll get into units. We'll get it when we get into units. But there you go. I would just say on the surface, I think they're pig-like. There you go. Continue, Paul. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. I think it's compared to pre-GHB 2017, it is a very, very different army now than it was before. And it's taken me up until pretty recently, I think, to kind of figure out what actually is going to work with them going forward. I've kind of had to take a little bit of a break and look at what's going on with the metagame and what really examine the war scrolls again and what the different combinations are with our command traits and allegiance abilities and battle traits. It was, I think the builds were a little bit less obvious to me than they used to be. But I think, oddly enough, through playing Stormcast a lot, I think I kind of figured out how Free Guild wants to play.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with lots of your points. I think they are better when they have more infantry. I think the worst part about them is the fact that you have so many freaking figs. And so you got to move all those little dudes around.
Yes.
Like, that is just the worst. From my personal perspective, I know a lot of people who, especially those who played, like, if you were like a 40K Tyrannid player for years, you're just like, whatever. It's nothing. But your whole army is how many like little Hormagaunts or whatever I had on the table. But the thing about it is one of the big things that I think keeps the Horde #Horde meta in check is the fact that Battle Shock's a thing, right? And like, if you can't just be blanket sort of immune to Battle Shock, you lose big units. They're very susceptible to it. Whereas this army is more naturally resistant. I mean, we'll talk about command traits, which they have a pretty decent little option hiding in there. But even without that, they've got, they are just pretty darn resistant to it in general, between bravery numbers and rerolls and roll tricks that can get you to basically where nothing runs, right? So, so we'll talk into all that. Tom, did you have any other thoughts on strengths and weaknesses you wanted to add in?
No, I think that a lot of people are default viewing them as like a gunline army, and I don't know that they have the tools to do that anymore in pure gunline. And what I mean by that is, like, they need to be mixed arms in some sense. They have to be with the new changes. Like the traditional turtling, they just don't do well. Not as well as other things, because let me tell you, I have a true gunline army that I put together, and it contains zero free peoples, and it will outrange them every day of the week.
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think what you're saying is just like, you can't just... one of the traditional narratives I think that's come up is this concept that, like, you should just do 120 handgunners or something like that, right? Just like all the handgunners in the world.
Yep.
And the problem with that is that those handgunners actually are fairly short ranged and can die fairly fast, right? Like, they're not tough enough, and it's hard for them to actually pick out what they need. So like, they don't have the other big rendy punches or mortal wound punches or stuff like that when you rely on just what the free peoples have, right? If you try to go full on gunline,
right?
Yeah, like stuff. The game I played after the one I mentioned, I was allied with a free people army. Okay. And, he had some handgunners and all this stuff. And he had a Huracanum and whatever backing him up, blah, blah, blah. And, like, he was playing against destruction against ogres, like somebody who had a ton of ogres. Okay. Like a ton of iron guts. And like, that was the main thing that was on his side of the table in our little 2-on-2 game. And, these chaff walls were getting in the way of the ogres and dying. And then they won turn priority. And I was like, well, sorry about your army, because those iron guts are going to come in and just like blow your army up. Just like, I was like, look, I'm cool, but you're probably dead. So
yeah.
Anyway, let's dig in. Let's dig into some more specifics. Let's get into the crunchy specifics. Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, let's talk about the allegiance ability, and then let's kind of, Paul, if you want to hit on a command trait or two and an artifact or two that you think are really good, I don't want to, review all 6. You have videos already doing that. So I would direct people to your channel for that true deep dive. But if you want to talk about their very interesting, but complicated and strange, but also very abusable allegiance ability.
Yeah, so the Free Guild Great Companies, you basically assemble your army to include groups of 3 units. One of those has to be a Free Guild Guard unit that has at least 20 models. And then the other 2 units in the Great Company have to have at least 10 models. And those 3 units in the Great Company are intended to be working closely together. So as long as they are within 6 inches of each other, if at the end of your opponent's charge phase, one of those units is within 3 inches of an enemy unit, so in close combat, and that unit is not in close combat, and is within 6 inches of the unit that's in close combat, it can either shoot or charge.
Right.
And the important note is, unlike the old what was it called? The old ability
rules.
Yep.
Yeah, the old detachment rules. This is not specifically like a counter charge or a stand and shoot. This happens every opponent's charge phase. So once you're in combat, you can charge anytime, you can shoot anytime, as long as the other conditions still apply. And it doesn't necessarily have to be directed at the unit that's, it doesn't have to be
the unit that triggered it.
Triggering it. So, like, if one of your units in the Great Company gets charged, it can trigger, 2 other units to charge or shoot, but they don't have to charge at that unit, and they don't have to shoot at that unit. It just allows them to charge or shoot.
Yep. It's really interesting.
Powerful. Yeah.
Sure. It's really interesting because, yes, you're right. So, like, let's picture just a standard triangle formation, right? Let's make it very easy for everybody so they understand exactly what we mean. So we got a triangle. You got a 20-pack of Free Guild Guard up here, and you've got 2 10-packs of Handgunners at the backside of the triangle, right? Easy peasy.
Yep.
We have satisfied the unit requirements of the detachment of the Great Company. That's how it is. Free Guild Guard get charged by some other unit. Okay, cool. The Handgunners, not currently engaged in any way. The 2 10-packs of Handgunners, right? Not currently engaged in any way. No enemy within 3 inches. They are both within 6 inches of the of the Free Guild Guard. Cool. They can shoot now. Like, they can do that.
Yeah, and whatever's within range. Go ahead and point click.
And so the point being is that, like, they could shoot at the unit that charged the Free Guild Guard, or they could shoot at something else. Anything else that's within range. And as you point out, that would be true even in the next opponent's charge phase. Right?
Yep.
Like, so again, it wasn't like a charge was completed, but a charge phase still happens every turn, right? Like, that's just a phase that's clicked through. And so then again, if those Handgunners remain unengaged, they can just turn and fire at somebody again or whatever. Right?
Yep.
So it's, and I'll openly admit, I did not catch that on first reading. It was you who pointed that out, like that I first saw it. So, like, that was very insightful on your part. I did not catch that, the every charge phase thing. I immediately saw I don't have to shoot that same person or charge that same person.
Yeah.
But I did not think about the recurrent charge phase thing, which was a super clever catch.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think that's the really powerful piece of it too, because if you think, bigger strategy, right? You have your, say, unit of guard and a big unit of Handgunners. Well, you can charge in your turn with your unit of guard, leave a snake tail back to be within 6 inches of the Handgunners, and then now it flips over to your opponent's turn. Now they have to either retreat out of combat with your Free Guild Guard, or they're going to get a rain of bullets on them in their charge phase.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
So
and as you pointed out, a big 40 pack of Free Guild Guard like swordsmen are a pretty defensive unit. Like, I don't, are they the most anvil-y thing in the game? No, but they're tough enough. You know what I mean? Like a good Mystic Shielded Swordsman unit is pretty darn resilient. And so they can hold up a big, you know, like a big frontage with a snake tail can sit there and hold up a lot of stuff for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. There's just so many quirky little strategic things that I think you can do with these great companies. And I think it's almost like getting a battalion for free. Like, that's almost how I think of it, is like, this allegiance ability is like, this is the kind of level of something that you would ordinarily get in a battalion.
Sure. Have you thought about, like, so the archers obviously are part of it too, right? Your little free guild archers. And, you know, obviously the free guild archers, which we'll talk about maybe in units, but they have the little huntsman ability, right? Where they can kind of go out before
scout. They get the advanced move.
Yes, they move before the game, right? They have like a Vanguard type ability.
Yep.
Have you thought about baiting them into a different sort of thing, like to a reverse triangle to trigger off a charge / shot early in the game? Like move them up, but like have them snake a little bit to trigger off a longer unit's charge or something like that,
absolutely.
or shots.
Yeah, that's definitely a thought that I've had. I haven't had a chance to test it yet.
If you'll remember, Paul, when we first talked about optimizing them, when we had that conversation, that was the first thing that I went to was utilizing the scouts in that way to push up, to grab an objective, and then if anybody tries to counter punch, you punch them in the PP.
Yeah,
Yep.
Suicide archers, right?
You suicide.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And they are like, when we get to units, they are hot garbage on their own. Like, they're to just like run up there and be bait and die. Like, that's what they're good for.
Yeah. But that's what we're talking about. Like,
oh yeah.
And they do that very well.
Yes, they do. They do that extremely well. And previously I would have never really thought that I would put archers in a list until we got great companies. And now it's like, they're 100-point charge bait.
Sure.
That can get off a couple of shots.
Yeah. So do you want to, so that's kind of allegiance. Do you want to touch on a couple command traits that you like, or artifacts? I know there's definitely a couple worth discussing. Two come to mind of the command traits right away, but I bet I have the same two you do.
Just really quickly on the battle traits, we also get the generic order battle trait baked into here as well, that we get to reroll all of our battle shock tests.
Yes, good call.
Which is really important with in combination with the Free Guild General, which lets you roll your battle shock on 2d6 and take the lowest in a 24-inch bubble around him, which is most of the board. And then those two things then in combination with the banners on almost all of your units let you ignore battle shock on a 1.
Right.
So 2d6.
So you're getting a lot of bites at the apple to try to roll that 1, basically.
Yeah. I believe it maths out to ignoring battle shock about 80% of the time.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that is very good. Plus, with the 2d6 and a reroll, you can very easily be evading battle shock or bleeding very little to begin with, even if you don't get the 1.
Yeah.
Right, unless your unit just gets blown up completely, right? Because your bravery is going to be pretty good given the size of your units, right? And the fact that, like, because of the 10 model buff and stuff like that. So, if you lose 5, 6, 7, 8 guys, realistically, a lot of the time, you're not going to bleed very bad, if at all, right? Because even if you don't get the 1, get a 2 or a 3, like highly, highly, highly likely. And at that
Yes.
point, you're just not losing much, right?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
So command traits.
Yeah, man.
The two that really jump out to me are inspiring and indomitable.
Uh-huh. These are my 2 as well.
Yeah. Inspiring is just a 9-inch bubble around your general that everything's immune to battle shock.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. That is really good in a high model count, relatively low bravery army. And indomitable is the same as I forget what it is in Stormcast, but I forget the name of it in Stormcast, but it's the exact same ability that you
Staunch
get.
Defender.
Staunch Defender, yes.
It's the Staunch Defender equivalent.
Yep. +1 to save for all of your free guild units within 6 inches of your general, as long as they don't charge in the same turn.
Right.
So, your free guild guard with sword and shield go from 4 up reroll 1s to 3 up reroll 1s, which is really tanky.
Yeah, absolutely. And
It's moving that needle
also,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, my only problem here is like obviously that both of those have an extremely high value, but you really need to think about which one fits your list, because like the battle shock immunity thing is potent, but I wouldn't call 9 inches the biggest bubble in the world. It's not bad, but it ain't terrible. And the real advantage to the battle shock immunity bubble is that it gives you a little more leeway to start using other command abilities. And these guys have a lot of command abilities that you're going to want to trigger that isn't just using your default battle shock immunity thing. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
So it's funny that Staunch Defender, as good as it is, I think almost loses out. Right. Like, although again, it really depends on the type of army you're running. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think the math on, the banner plus rerolling battle shock tests plus ignoring battle shock on 1s makes me lean more towards indomitable personally. Just because it makes so many of your units just like steel. They're taking a hit really easily. They're shrugging off a lot of damage
from non-rend targets, or from non-rend attackers,
and non-mortal wound attackers, right? But
yes. We'll talk about weaknesses.
Yeah, but I mean that's like the old thing, like in Magic, like, oh yeah, what's this creature's weakness? Oh, it dies to removal. Like, sure. Yeah, everything's bad to rend. Like,
sure,
yeah,
sure, totally fair. Well, I mean, let's be honest, there are some green creatures that are pretty good against removal. But anyway, yes. But I get what I take your meaning. All right. So was there any artifacts you wanted to hit on? Any particular faves you've got on the table?
Really the only one that I've really gotten stuck on is the Armor of Meteoric Iron. Mm-hmm. And that just gives the hero +1 to save.
Yep.
And that just goes on a Griffin, putting him on a 2-up save all day long.
Yep. I mean, it's like once GHB 2017 came out, this has been the general I've seen on the table. Every single, or not general, but a character. He's not always the general, but a character I've seen on the table every single game in my buddy's Free People Army, like the Mr. 2-up Griffin. Here he comes again. Just like this
now
dude
260-point Griffin.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very killy model for his points. Like, I think at his points value, he is a great value. I think he's defensive enough, offensive enough. Sure, he's got weaknesses, but I think he's pretty darn great for 260. So,
yeah. Oh yeah, he's a good buy.
Absolutely. All right. I agree with you. To me, the Armor of Meteoric Iron is like it's the one. I wish it wasn't necessarily the one, but
it's so boring. Like for an item.
So boring. Yeah, it's so boring.
Yeah. And because we only have one battalion to work with, it's not like we're getting multiple artifacts. So it's kind of like the auto pick.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. And if you're not going with Indomitable, then you definitely want the armor of Meteoric Iron on your general so that he has a 2-up save.
Right. Yep.
Because
so at least he's more endurant. Yes. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, picking that guy off is a pretty good move. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not the biggest fan of general sniping and character sniping, but it's pretty good to just kill that guy. It ain't bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is an army that like really rests a lot on one 5-wound model being like the linchpin to all of your stuff working together well.
Right.
Yeah. This is like the favorite type of thing that KO like to fight.
Sure.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Like that dude's dead. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he's gone.
All right.
Yeah, you want to talk about like worst possible matchup is free
Sure.
guild against KO any day against like any list. She's like, oh, good. Sky hooks into my general turn 1. Great.
They're like laser targeting.
Yep, they are.
All right. Especially against heroes. I mean, that's the problem. Like, you're perfectly primed to just take that hook in the face. So
yeah.
At least he's not flying.
That's a fair point.
I mean, like, it could be worse.
It could be worse. There you go.
Could be playing Zinch and have like a... Yeah, anyways.
Well, I mean, you know, again, pre-GHB 2017, he could be on a Pegasus instead of a horse, so he would have been flying.
That's true. And that would have not went well for him.
So disappointed that they took away the Pegasus option.
I'll bet. Because that gives him mobility then.
Yeah. I mean, he still had the same movement, but it gave him that extra little edge to get out of trouble. Get on top of a terrain feature that'll, you know, keep him out of the way of melee or just give him that, you know, extra +1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the units. Let's talk about the
Yes.
actual units that make up the army. All right. So I don't want to deep dive necessarily on every single unit, but let's hit some sort of highs and low points, talk about some general use. We mentioned archers earlier. They're pretty worthless and god-awful, except for that Vanguard ability, right? That get out front and scout ability. We talked about using them as bait in the detachments in the Great Company. But of course, obviously, they can also be a great trick to screw up things like murder hosts and other stuff like that, right? Just very advanced chaff to protect your key pieces. To me, that's where they earn their points back.
Yes.
I don't know. Thoughts on that?
They also prevent your opponent from summoning, from deep striking, like most deep strike abilities into the middle of the battlefield. I mean, they stop a lot of stuff. I think the only abilities they really don't stop that are in that like deep strikey sort of realm are like Vanguard Wing and Hammer Strike Brotherhood.
Change Host.
Hammer Strike Force.
Change Host doesn't have a minimum when they teleport.
Oh, they don't?
And Change Hosts are really popular right now.
I mean, all the cheaters, yes, but it stops everybody else.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yes. The cheater teleports.
The cheater teleports still work. But for everybody else, your Fire Slayer tunnelers and whatever. Like,
come on, GW, fix the cheaters. That's all we're asking.
Give them time. I'm sure it'll happen, and then you'll complain about that. And I look forward to that.
Hey, I'm not playing any cheaters right now.
Sure. It'll accidentally sweep up something you like, and you'll be like, this is garbage. I hate all this. And something you enjoy will get swept up in the correction.
Yeah, that'll probably happen.
A rising tide nerfs all boats. So, okay. Let's dig into like the most popular unit, shall we? Let's just talk handgunners for a moment.
Yep.
All right. So break down handgunner for me.
Tell us why handgunners are amazing.
Yes.
They're amazing because their profile, like, initially looks like garbage. They hit on 5s, wound on 3s, rend 1. But they get +1 to hit if there are 20 or more models in the group. and they get +1 to hit if they do not move that turn.
Mm-hmm.
And then your general's command ability can give them +1 to hit and +1 to wound, so they can get all the way down to 2 to hit, 2 to wound, rend 1.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good numbers. Them's
Especially
decent.
if they're getting free off turn attacks.
Yes, exactly.
Now, are they retaining all of those bonuses in those off turn attacks?
I believe they are.
I don't think they are. You may want to recheck that just for the future.
Yeah, I think one of them. I think one of the +1 to hits goes away.
The steady aim goes away. The other one stays.
Yep.
Because one of them is just a state-based check that's +1 if you have 20 or more models, and that's all it cares about when you shoot.
Yeah.
Period. No phase requirement. The steady aim one goes away because it's only +1 when you shoot in the shooting phase, so long as there are no enemies around.
Yep.
So the key being is it doesn't fire off the Piper ability,
and it doesn't fire off of the
detachment grade company.
The detachment ability. Yeah, you lose that bonus to hit when you fire into detachment because you're not firing in the shooting phase anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, given with everything described, it's still 3s.
3 to hit 2 wound is still really good.
I know. Those are my engine rigger profiles. I'm very aware.
But there's so much more to handgunners. That's a great profile, and I totally agree with you. Well, I mentioned the Pipers. Do you want to describe the Piper and how it works?
Basically, it's like the old stand and shoot ability. If they have an enemy unit that ends their charge within 3 inches of them, they get to shoot at it.
So brutal. It is so brutal. Charging a 30-pack of handgunners that's fully juiced up, that has all of its, the bonuses you just talked about. Them losing that +1, being on 3s, 2s, -1 rend, and just charging into those guns. Dear God. You have to bring heat on them, right? You can't just, charge in some normal unit and think it's going to survive. It will get shredded on the way in.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that stand and shoot ability is so crazy devastating. Because it invalidates certain units' ability to actually attack the handgunners. Right. And they're very squishy melee, right? Because there are certain units that just will never be able to get into contact.
They won't survive the contact. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
So, an example of something that may struggle on that contact would be Fire Slayers. Because those berserkers are only 5 up on that shot that they have to weather.
Sure.
And their ward save is contingent upon the phase at the start of the phase. And so that firing off is going to happen in the charge phase. So when you actually get to melee, they're going to be at a worse ward save.
Right. Now, I will say here's the way to cheat this is, and you got to be very careful with your placement of your handgunner units, because if you have your handgunner unit and then another unit next to them,
like a contingent unit,
sure, and you got to be very careful with how that unit is arrayed, because what's going to happen is I'm going to charge the unit next to the handgunners, make my guy who charges in on the closest to the handgunner charge at 3.1 inches away, right, from the handgunner unit, right, and then pile in and swing all the way around the base and lock that corner, and now I'm within 3 inches.
And so they lose their bonuses, and they lose their free shot. Exactly. Another way to do this is when you pile in, you'll stretch out a line. You can see I do some of this in my pile in video. You'll stretch out a line, and then when you pile in, you always have to go near the nearest model. So even though a huge part of your line is not within 3 inches of the enemy, when they pile in, they can only pile in towards the handgunners. And then what it'll do, that'll bring them into contact, but still be within 1 inch reach of their weapon. You effectively have a 4 inch range on that pile.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So you've got to be very aware with your positioning, right?
Yep.
Because you can get yourself trapped in situations like that and basically invalidate one of your most powerful abilities.
Or your opponent can do the opposite and accidentally trigger it.
Yeah.
Sure. Which is always hilarious. When they don't charge the actual handgunner unit, they charge something next to them and then don't realize that they just ended within 3 inches. And the handgunners turn and just
unit.
blow that other unit away.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's also a fun trick that you can do with, great companies as well. You can run like 2 different great companies and kind of intermix them so that, no matter what happens, if one of the units of guard, say, gets charged, then 2 units of handgunners can trigger and fire, because one will trigger from the great company and one will trigger from their stand and shoot.
Yep.
Yeah, you go for kind of like the interlocking comb or something like that, like that kind of a layout. Yeah. There's still yet another key to these guys. There's one more thing. And to me, it is maybe the secretest tech of these dudes that is the most brutal.
The long rifle?
The long rifle, baby. The sniper rifle. I love the sniper rifle. If there was ever a reason to pile on lots of units of handgunners, right, or have interesting ways to deploy, like I had my buddy who runs Free People ran a generic order army instead, and just did MSU handgunners to spam long rifles, and then had them all hump like a Huracanum and other +1 sort of stuff. So he didn't need the 20-person bonus to still get to 2s, right? And was just like, had like in any given turn, had like 5 or 6 long rifles to just be like, that hero, click, point, dead. That hero, click, point, dead, right? Because it's a 30-inch shot, base 4/3, -1, 2 damage. But obviously that goes way down, right? Because it's going to benefit from everything we've talked about already.
Yep.
Yeah, I love me the sniper rifles.
Yeah, they are so good. So good. And that's, I think, the other important thing too with like the great companies, like that just triggers off them in the shooting phase, or in the charge phase to shoot, and you just get like a 30-inch shot off wherever in your opponent's charge phase. Like you can just your opponent can charge you, and you can just be like, okay, I'll pick off the last couple of wounds on your general. Oops.
Because that is one of the drawbacks to handgunners we shouldn't be remiss about, right? Like, their range isn't terrible, but it also isn't great, right? Like, 16 inches is pretty short. So, like, you are not going to have, like, your choice of targets in the world with them.
Yep.
This is a reactive unit, not a proactive unit.
Yes, definitely.
Like you are responding to what's on the battlefield, because you cannot move these guys fast, and they have a fairly short range on those guns.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of occasions where you would probably advance them up turn 1, but then they're probably staying exactly where they are for the rest of the game.
Right. Yeah. So you have like a 4-inch plus D6.
Yep.
Like positioning.
Well, I don't even know if you'd necessarily run them. I think often you just walk your 4 forward, probably.
Yeah.
Depending on the enemy setup and whether you're going first or second, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And you just say, I don't need the +1 to hit this round. I'll be on 3s. And I'll roll with it. Like, that's fine.
Yep.
It's still probably better to get the shot than not, right? So
exactly. I mean, they're even with 4s and 3s, rend 1, a 20 block of them, still putting out a lot of damage.
Yep.
Sure. Absolutely.
A lot of shots.
So I think we've covered handgunners. I mean, obviously their weaknesses, if something does get into melee with them, these guys are dead. Like, unless they get to another, they are incredibly susceptible to double turns, right?
Oh, yes.
Like, these guys in melee getting double turned is a dead unit, period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So that is definitely something you have to be aware of and think about. Like, think about the turn order. Do you stand the chance of getting double turned? What is going to be in melee, right? Like, you need to think ahead in this stuff to get the proper use out of your handgunners.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say if somebody charges you and then you double turn, you might be able to dig your way out just through shooting directly into the thing that's charged them, right?
Yes.
You'll have so many shots. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And even without the bonuses, generally you can also pile other unit shots into them, like through just through other people just who are going to be in the area targeting and blowing that unit off the table, and then you've sort of freed them back up. So
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yes.
You mentioned swordsman. I want you to talk about swordsman, the Free Guild Guard in general, and why you like swordsman versus halberdiers. And greatswords, if you would.
Yes. So swordsmen are basically good for the same reason that liberators are good, right? Like, they're a solid anvil unit. They're resistant to battle shock. They're 10 wounds for 80 points at a 4-up save, rerolling ones that can easily get +1 to save from Indomitable, plus, can easily get a Mystic Shield from somewhere, or, they can sit in terrain and get an extra +1 to save. So, I mean, getting these guys to a 3 or a 2 on their save, rerolling ones, is not a hard thing to do. They're also getting +1 to hit once they hit a unit size of 20, and then an extra +1 to hit for every 10 after that. So you can, if you take, your max block of 40, they're hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s, which is not bad at all. It's not like super exciting, but a block of 40 dudes that are all hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s, with a 4-up save, rerolling 1s is pretty good. Like, you're going to throw a lot of attacks and you're going to survive a lot of damage. I think they're a really good just anvil unit. I think they're survivable in the same way that liberators are. I think with the combination with Indomitable, like, just like liberators in like Vanguard Wing will combine with Staunch Defender and end up having, a ridiculous save and are just like impossible to beat down very quickly without mortal wounds. I think they're very much in the same position. And then they're battle shock resistant for anything that, for whatever losses they do take.
Right. I will say one interesting caveat to be aware of is that extra +1 they get to their save for being swordsmen is combat phase only.
Yep.
Right. So again, they can be a little more sensitive to enemy shooting, especially enemy shooting with rend. Right.
Yes.
Enemy shooting with like neg1 rend is the death of these guys pretty fast, because suddenly they went from 4-up rerolling 1s to 6-up rerolling 1s. That's a big swing.
And heaven forbid a neg 2 rend.
Sure. Of
Yep.
course.
Yeah, so I mean, that in particular is like less than ideal, but excuse me. Halberdiers used to be like the thing to run out of your state troops. And I think just because they have a base 5-up save now, they're a lot harder to justify just because they die so easily. Even though they do have that rend 1 and they still have the same stat line otherwise that the swordsmen do, just having a base 5-up save I think is really tough. They're more of like a glass cannon sort of unit if you get them into anything.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The halberdiers have been fantastically, like, I've been underwhelmed by them when I see them perform, because exactly once something gets into them with like some good rend, it just becomes almost like mutually assured destruction. Right now, God forbid anything that's remotely tough get into them. Like a small, relatively tough unit that still has a neg 1 rend will just chop its way through that whole block.
Yep.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And that's problematic. Whereas I agree, the swordsman in that position will just tie it up forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I think the swordsman filled a necessary role of anvil in this army, right? Like, you've got good sources of damage in this army, especially when especially depending on how you dip your allies, right?
Yes.
What you don't necessarily have without going into swordsman are really great sources of just tar pits, right? Of those anvils. And so I think I agree with you. I think swordsmen are the better play.
Yeah, and their horde discount is really big. They're getting 40 points off of that, that last 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, 280 for 40 of these guys is not a bad number at all. They're also battle line, obviously, right? So, I mean, like this is another one of those armies that just can't help but fill its battle line for the most part.
Sure.
Especially if you're in free peoples, because, your handgunners are battle line. If you're free peoples, your greatswords are battle line. Your free guild guard are battle line. Your archers are battle line. Your demi-gryphs are battle line. Like, good Lord. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it all is battle line. You don't even think about it. You just feel it.
It's not even a consideration.
Right. We call that the anti-Caradron Overlord strategy.
Yes.
You have no idea. I've been building lists, and I'm just like, mother. Like
every time
I'm like, well, here's my 240 point tax, because I have one unit that I'm actually going to use, and then 2 other units are just going to stand around with the thumb up their butt.
Yep.
Like, it's terrible. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice that we have good battle line options for these guys. Yeah. And that too is like the other thing to think about is with swordsmen, you have a 4-up save rerolling 1s for 280 points for 40 wounds.
Right.
Like, that's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm. It's a good trade. Take that.
Now, let's talk about the other sword, the big sword. Some might even call it a great sword. So let's talk about the great swords.
It's a pretty small
obviously a much different price, right? Because these guys are 150 for 10, 420 on the horde discount for 30.
Yeah.
But profile wise, they're pretty much going to be on 3s and 3s the majority of the time, because if there's any hero within 14 inches, they get +1 to hit. So they're more or less 2 attacks each, 3s, neg 1 rend 1 damage, right?
Yeah.
So certainly a solid profile.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm much more likely to take them now than I was before GHB 2017, because now they're that really powerful hammer unit. Mm-hmm. Whereas before you had a lot of other hammer options that I think were better. Like, if my choice was, do I take Grail Knights or do I take Greatswords? I take Grail Knights. But now I don't have that option anymore. So Greatswords, I think, are what you slot in.
So let me ask this question. What's the unit size for Greatswords?
That is a very good question. Because that horde discount is not very big.
It's not.
Yeah. So, and I'm also hesitant to say, even at a unit size of 30, how many of those guys are actually going to get into combat, and how many of them are actually going to die because they're on a 4-up save? So
would you say the greatswords are unwieldy?
Yes. This is the show of puns, folks. Tune in every Wednesday for Pun Hammer Weekly. I'll tell you right now, I love these guys as an MSU unit. I really do. Give me just packs of 10ers. Just 10ers, man. That's all I want. Because they got a 1-inch range. It's hard to get more than 10 of these into a lot of combats, right? But 10 of them generate 20 attacks. They have no number-dependent bonuses, right?
Yeah.
Who cares that they have more or less dudes? It's not relevant to their profile. You get 10 of them, you can likely get all 10 in combat. They're going to gen out 20 attacks on 3s, neg 1 damage. Like they'll swing in, hit. If like their save is good enough, but if they die, it's a tenner. They've probably punched their weight, right? Whereas 30 of them can be so unwieldy to get around all your other big blocks, right?
Yeah.
This gives them much more like snake and sort of hide potential, where they can just be these little units moving around, ready to hammer anybody who comes into your bigger blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
And that size, by the way, will protect them as well, because they'll be able to hide and then move into strategic positions.
Yep.
And they're much less threatening. You know, just if you look at the other targets that you have on the battlefield, you know, when you're sitting across the table from this, if you have like, say, like the lists that I've been thinking of are like 80 swordsmen. Like, and then you have your general that is incredibly valuable. And then, you know, whatever you ally in is probably also going to be incredibly valuable. Your swordsman.
Right.
And they're just going to kind of sneak in and do a ton of damage.
Yep. All right. Let's move on. Last unit I want to really cover. Let's talk Demi-gryphs. Okay. So I said they're pig-like, and I stand behind that. Demi-gryphs are 4 wound models with a 4-up save, 10-inch move, right? 160 on the points. Okay, so you're getting 3 of these guys. Okay.
A lot worse than pigs.
Well, it's 12 wounds compared to 15 for 20 more points. I'm not, again, I said pig-like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The Ironjaw's army also doesn't have shooting to speak of. So like I get it why these guys, you know, it's not a fair direct comparison, right? Sure. Now, I will also say that attack profile wise, they're not dissimilar to them. Like it's reversed. The mount here is scarier than the dude, right? Sure. Yeah. Because the guy on top is basically going to be like, you know, 2 attacks at pretty average numbers with no rend. Like there's a couple different variants on that, but that's basically what happens here. Whether you go for the
lances on the charge, he's worthless.
Right. Exactly. So you've got, because obviously you've got the standard like lance thing where you can build them for charge, or just halberds where they are regardless. Yep. But the bird is like 3 attacks, 4-up, 3-up, neg 1 rend, 1 damage. So he's the one packing the rend with more attacks, right? And most importantly, if you get that 6 right on the wound roll for the birds, it goes to D3 damage. They have an easier trigger D3 damage than the pigs.
They do.
But again, the mounts have a D3 damage trigger.
Yep.
Right. So again, I think these guys really are very pig-like. There's also like, I don't want to undercount the fact that they're 10-inch instead of the pig's 9-inch move. That's not nothing. It's not huge, but it's not nothing. And these guys do have like a 2-inch extra move on the charge. Right.
Yep.
Like they're +2 to all charge rolls. So okay. Yeah. Like I think they are a pretty decent mobile anvil. What they do in this army is be able to sweep in where you need them and act as mobile pseudo anvil chaff to protect the more important units that are actually doing the damage in your army. Right? Because they're going to be able to cover a lot more space.
Yeah, I think you hang them out on your flanks and, you know, you run them into your opponent's targets that are potentially going to be problematic for, you know, all of your foot sloggers, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know, if your opponent has some long range shooting, they're an excellent thing to get into the shooting to, you know, try and nerf that down a little bit. If they have some fast moving stuff, it will at least tie it up for a while so they can't just blitz across the battlefield as easily. They, in a way, kind of play the same sort of role that the archers do when the archers vanguard out, and they're just kind of a speed bump. You know, I think Demi-gryphs are going to be a pretty big speed bump a lot of the time. You know, I think in general, I think they're good. They're just not they're not what they were in 8th edition. right?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, that's really the problem, right? I think everybody compares them to their former selves.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Their memory is haunting them.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's fair because they have a different function now in this army. And I think a 3 of them or 2 3s of them is the right number, depending on what your rest of your army consistency is. And I agree with you. They just sit out on the flanks or somewhere or hide behind units because they can snake fairly easy, right? And when things start coming for you, they just snake up and get in there and get in the way, right? And make it very hard because you can like they're on the such as the nature of their bases, they can ride out Conga and just be like, come at me, bro. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be relatively difficult to remove. You know, depending on what's charging into them, it could take 1, 2, 3 combat rounds to remove, depending.
And they give a mobility that the rest of the army just doesn't have.
Exactly. Like so much of this army outside of like, when we're not going to deep dive on Pistoliers and Outriders because they're a whole different subject. But like, and the rest of this army is not fast, right? Your real key pieces are foot dudes.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, having played KO, like I know it sounds silly, but like the raw lack of speed that KO have outside of their balloon boys and their ships is stunning. Like when the foot soldiers and when the heroes get out there, man, like you do the math and you're like, well, I can't get to that objective this game. It's not possible.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I agree. I think that depending on the scenario, it really shapes how you play them. So I agree. I think they are a good inclusion if you set your expectations accordingly and use them right.
Yep.
Okay. Let's talk about leaders. We got 2 really I care about here, which is obviously that's our guys. But there's 2 I want to talk on. The regular general and then the guy on Griffin. Give me your breakdown first, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on a couple things. But go ahead. Of these 2 guys, how do you like them? How do you like to use them? What do you see their value as?
I think your regular general on horseback he's not quite an auto take as your army general, but he's pretty close because his command ability is so strong. Being able to give 3 units +1 to hit and +1 to wound is really, really powerful. His banner is really powerful. He's naturally on a 3-up save if you take him with a profile with a shield, so he's really durable. He's really not fighty. You want to hide him in the back and just use him to buff your guys. But he's I think in terms of I think he probably has one of the best command abilities in the game. Not the best, but like if you're going to make like a top 10 list, he's probably on it.
Sure. Well, would you like to talk about the cheating that you can do between this and the Great Company rules?
What do you mean?
Like the nature of the way his bonuses are structured, and then the movement with your Great Company triggers, your detachment rule triggers.
Oh, right. That he, the downside of his command ability is that the units that he targets can't move that turn, but it's that turn, not until your next hero phase.
Right.
So they can make that counter charge on your opponent's turn and still keep those buffs.
Right. It's such a clever little synergy, right? Of like, yeah, I'm not going to charge you on my turn. I'm going to wait until you charge me, and then I'm going to charge you and get to keep this bonus. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I actually love how that synergizes. I think that's great. And I agree with you. Like, it's a very powerful ability. The fact that it's to hit and to wound and 3 units, like that's a lot of bonus being spread across your army.
Yes. And with that combination with the Great Companies is very, very powerful. And, worth noting with your Demi-gryphs, if you splash that onto Demi-gryphs after their first round of combat, it's giving them the +1 to wound. So they're triggering. they're triggering the D3 damage on 5s instead of 6s on the mounts.
Very nice. So I hadn't thought about that little synergy. That's a nice little trick.
Yeah.
All right. I dig it.
It's a cute little trick.
Go bird. Cute, absolutely. Go birds.
You can pull another +1 if you have a beast wizard in your army as well as an ally. 100 point wizard.
Yep, definitely have done that before.
All right. So what about Mr. Sure. So let's talk about Mr. Griffin guy. Big Bird. Let's talk about Big Bird. Like the most biggest, ridiculous Griffin and Griffin wings in the game.
Yes. 260 points, man. Like
he is
there it is.
He is a great sacrificial piece.
Yeah. He just like throw an armor of meteoric iron on one and move your lines up. Your opponent comes forward. They fly, jump the line, charge into something, probably survive a few rounds of combat. And they're a big, attractive target to take the heat off of other units in your army.
Yep.
Yeah, and it should be pointed out, this dude is no slouch in melee. Right?
Right.
Like, he can take the Great Hammer that's a -2 rend weapon. D3 damage.
He's not going to, though. He's going to take the 2 up with the meteoric armor.
No. This is just his normal weapon kit out. It's not a magic item.
Sorry.
It's just one of his normal weapon choices. You're fine.
Right.
You're okay. He's his bird, and his bird attacks are -2 rend D6 damage as long as the bird has like, what is it, 6 or less wounds? Yeah, 6 or less wounds. Okay. So like D6 damage bites are, pretty good as things go. Cannonballs are pretty good in the world of this. And even the bird's regular spam attack of his claws are still -1 rend 2 damage.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
To
me, this guy is like the great hero inclusion that is never the general.
Right. Yeah. Right.
It's always the guy on foot.
Sacrificial piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not even necessarily sacrificial. I mean, I think he's pretty durable and is going to go run in and get a lot of work done.
Yeah, no, when I say sacrificial, what I mean by that is if you need to throw somebody in front of something and know that thing is never coming out of that fight.
Right, he's going to get dragged down. Like the end of this is this thing getting dragged down.
This thing getting dying. He is something you can throw forward and just be like, okay, that's 260 points. I'll do that.
Right, he'll kill his weight before he goes down.
Yeah.
Like that's the key.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean,
his
real serious discussion is like not like whether or not you include one. It's how many. Like that's the discussion that I've seen. People talking about building free guild lists is: do you run 2? Do you run 3?
Right.
I mean, I've seen some people running 3 of them, and I mean, 3 of them flying at your opponent is pretty intimidating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like if they swarm on something, that's not great for that thing.
No.
Sure,
they're going to give you the mobile
so.
punch as well.
Yes.
Like a mobile punch that you need that you don't have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
To me, they're a shining star in the army. They really are because they're a scare unit. The thing of it is, they are a unit your opponent has to pay attention to. And yes, their guns will draw on him, but you can use that to your advantage, right? To direct to set up your other units where you need them to be, to keep the heat off of them. Yeah. And I agree. At 260 in a 2K army, 3 of these guys isn't an out of the box choice. It's not. Because look, if the double Maw Crusher army is real, that's real. Right? 3 of these guys is cheaper than 2 Maw Crushers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now these guys are Maw Crusher good, but
by a margin.
Still.
By a margin cheaper. Let's be very clear about this. Not just cheaper, like an entire unit cheaper.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you can get 2 of these guys for the cost of 1 Star Drake.
That's a good comparison. I mean, Star Drakes are like crazy powerful, but yes. But 1 Star Drake is still only 1 Star Drake. It can only be in one place.
Yeah.
That is a limitation. It is 1 unit. Two
Yeah.
Griffins can be in two places because they are in fact 2 units. That's how that works. It's pretty straightforward math, really.
Yes.
So I agree. I think that this guy is an absolute gem in the Force. Also a big source of neg 2 rend in the army, which is like important. You need some number of units that are neg 2 rend, and he's one of the good sources of it, right? Because a lot of this army has rend, but it's a lot of neg 1 rend.
Right. Which Seraphon just laugh at.
Of course, exactly. Yeah, there are things in the game that just laugh off neg 1 rend, right? So being able to have that extra punch is very important. All right, let's close this out as we've gone on for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Let's close this out and talk about some allies. What are your hot picks for allies and why? What do you like?
I like the Luminarch of Hysh a lot.
Yeah, baby, the Lumi.
I mean that big rend 2 6 damage 30-inch shot is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Giving you a 6-up ward save bubble, so you have a little bit of extra durability, is awesome. It's got a wizard riding on it, so you get a mystic shield. Plus his spell is great against horde units. It's it's a triple arcane bolt against.
That Luminarch is a hidden gem that most armies have not discovered yet.
That most armies
all about the Luminarch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most armies
all about the Lumi.
Yeah. And it's only 240 points. Like that's the other crazy thing about it.
I may or may not have a Caradron conversion Luminarch. The bits for it 18 inches from my hand right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're going, that KO Fire Slayer mix army, you're already in general order, then
we don't need to talk about that.
Now, I do want to point out one limitation on the Lumi. Okay, I think it's a great unit. I back this choice 100%.
Yep.
I just want to point out one very critical thing about the Lumi. Okay, when we think of the Huracanum and its aura, right, and the way its +1 works, it is not the same as the way the aura off of the Lumi works.
Yep.
It is not the unit being within the bubble that grants the 6-up ward save. It is the models. Yes.
So when you allocate wounds, you have to allocate wounds in the unit to the models within the bubble range.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same thing for the war shrines. Yep.
Exactly. It's a small thing that it's easy for people to miss and think it's just like, oh, the unit's within range, hence I'm good. It's not like that. So you do have to kind of have enough of your units humping this thing to be able to allocate appropriately.
But it has good enough mobility with all the rest of your 5 movement or whatever else, 6, like all the rest of your junk movement, it can get around.
Yeah. I'm not saying that. Like I am a buyer on the Luminarch. Like stop selling. I'm in. At 240 with a horde killer spell, a ridiculous laser gun, a wizard to mystic shield, and a ward save. For 240, I'm
a buyer.
Yep. Exactly. Like this thing is banging on
a 30-inch range gun.
Yeah.
I would buy that for $1.
Absolutely.
Yep. One-shot heroes every day of the week.
Well, I would definitely buy Luminarchs for $1. I don't think anybody's selling the model at that price. But if you have any Luminarchs you'd like to get rid of for $1, please contact me. Leave a comment below. All right. What else do you like as far as allies go? Because, I mean, you still that's the other big advantage of the Lumi at 240. You got some space still.
Yeah. Definitely like the Battle Mage. Either with Life Surge or Wild Form, depending on the situation.
Interesting. Okay.
I think Life Surge, I think that's a really strong choice because you need to keep your general alive. So being able to give him that 6-up ward save and heal him for those instances where he's not getting iced in one turn, and being able to heal up your Griffins once they're in combat. definitely valuable. Wild form gives stuff +1 to wound. There's not a lot of +1 to wound going around the army, so that's just an extra buff that you can give to something. Yep. You're not going to Mystic Shield it if you want to go a little more on offense. So I think that's a decent choice. Running a pair of rocket batteries, that seems like that could easily be a thing as well.
Yep, absolutely. The good old Hellstorm rocket batteries. Agreed. I support it. Hellstorms, I stand behind them over cannons every day and twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're definitely, because if you take cannons, you basically need to take an engineer.
Right. Whereas rockets batteries don't need line of sight. And let's face it, you're gonna have the round where all 3 rockets hit. And you're just gonna level a unit. It's not gonna happen more than once a game, but that one round it does happen. It's just gonna be like, oh god, as you just reduce something to rubble.
Yes, it's the conversation, Vince, we had with the battalion.
Yeah, I was talking
once.
It only has to happen once. Exactly. I finally got my buddy to switch over because he was a big cannon enthusiast from back in 8th edition. I finally got him to switch over and try Hellstorms. And like round 1, he points one of them at my whatever big monster I have on the table, hit with all 3 rockets, wounded with all 3 rockets, killed my monster. And I was like, well, there you go. I'm glad I gave you that advice.
Paul, let me ask you to think about another option to play around with. On the Battle Mage, you named the Wild Form and Life Surge, and I agree with those. Like, those are great picks. Vince and I have long been, he already knows where I'm going.
I already know where you're going because I was going to recommend it too.
Yeah, I would encourage you to go play with the White Mage.
Yeah, the Light of Battle.
The Light of Battle. It's a 4 casting value. 18-inch range, choose a unit, it's immune to battle shock. Because what this does is against that fight where you are going to lose 20 plus bodies, this lets you say, no, that unit's not running. And on top of that, it then creates an aura where units within 6 inches gain +1 bravery. So it again then pushes her out everything else. So if you're talking about running the +1 armor, that may be a really good way to shore up those key battle shock areas.
That is an interesting choice.
Yeah, the other reason I love it is that spell casts on a 4.
Let's be very clear.
Okay, and I suck at rolling spells, but even I can roll 4, I would say 50% of the time. So, it's consistent. The point being is that with Battle Shock immunity, you want it to be relatively consistent, right?
Yep.
And it can be a great way to make sure that key unit that is about to get hit, right? Like you're looking at it going, that's going to get hit, but I need it to stick. You can pick one of those every round, right? You can always have that key unit without needing to burn any kind of command ability.
Yeah, that 40 Swordmasters will always stick.
Right.
Yep.
Regardless of where your general goes or gets sniped or blah, 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 right? You don't have to worry about any of that crap, right? Because that can be the other problem with the bravery bubble is like when Mr. 5 wound gets blown off the table.
Yep.
Suddenly everything around him is like, oh crap, and just runs. Right. But this, if they've got that buff riding, they're good.
Yep.
Stuff to think about.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Light Wizard. It's because that spell is a 4. I'm a big fan. Like it's so consistent.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a few good options in Stormcast as well.
Yeah. Sure.
I think feels awkward because all of your other allies in Free People used to be part of the Empire. Apart from the half of Ironweld Arsenal that's Dwarven. But something like the Knight Venator, fly him out there. Now all of your handgunners are 2-up re-rolling 1s and then wounding on 2s. For 80 points. And he's another guy that has a good save and is going to
hold it. He goes and stands on terrain. He can hold a unit for pretty long with a 2-up.
Yeah, exactly. He's just going to sit there and be really annoying and give you buffs.
another way, by the way, those Night Venators are excellent tools for slowing interestingly Fire Slayers down.
Do both of you guys mean the Knight of Zeros?
I'm sorry, you're right.
You mean 80-point Lantern Boy?
Yes. Yeah, Lantern Boy.
Yes.
Yes. So I was just talking and recognized that yes, you're right. Yes, it's the Azeros. Yes, the Azeros, Lantern Boy, 80 points.
The names of Stormcast we all know are eminently switchable and irrelevantly similar. So there you go.
Yes.
There's no issue.
Yes.
No, what I was going to say is because what he does is he gains the ability to against. I think he is a secret weapon, by the way, that a lot of people haven't discovered against Fire Slayers. Because he will pin a horde of 30 Fire Slayers for the entire game. Because if you come and hit him on a flank where there's like a model, or like 2 models within range, they will never cut through him.
Right.
Yeah.
You just can't get enough bodies over there to actually fight him.
Can't get enough bodies to fight him to break him off of holding that unit.
Another like sort of pack that I like is the rocket battery, the organ gun, and a battle mage, which is exactly 400.
Yep.
I feel like the organ gun is a pretty decent little shooter for 120. The dwarven one is the more reliable one. I like it better than the old Empire one. You can pretty reliably fire like 3 decks off on that thing and get 3d6 shots at neg 1. Again, it's just a nice another single source of a pretty decent amount of shooting. Right.
And you could trade that if you wanted to. You could also trade that for another battle mage.
Sure.
Battle mages and a rocket battery.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yep. But I like the 180 plus 120. The math of that being exactly square makes me happy. But yeah, the other one, if you wanted to add some more like long range punch, would be going into some of the like long strikes right out of there. Like you can, if you really want to lean into more of that, you can.
I think your better bet is to do a Venator, like a true Venator at that point. What we were talking about,
Mr. Buster Arrow, sure.
Yeah, Mr. Buster Arrow, because he has the 30-inch range with the 12-inch movement.
Sure.
And so it gives you mobility that you don't have. He's on a 3-up save.
Yep.
So he can hold something in a pinch if he has to, even though he's not going to kill anything. He can hold it. And he has a good mobility, which is what you need in this force. Like what you are dearly, dearly lacking is mobility.
Yep.
Any others grab your attention?
I mean, the obvious one that we've been sort of beating around the bush about the whole time, the Hurricanum.
Yeah, indeed. We had to mention it.
It's still a house.
It's a good choice. It's an offensive machine, right? Because of it's what it does to the rest of your army, but also because of its own mortal wound spam
within 18 inches. Let me drive this home. It is a machine within 18 inches, which is the area of kill zone where you're already killing everything.
Sure, but there's no doubt that it's great.
Yeah.
Like there's just no doubt. Like when characters wander into that thing's range, they just cease existing if they don't have mortal wound protection, right?
Yep.
Because it's just like 3 lightning bolts on their head, dead.
Yep.
That's it for that guy. Without mortal wound protection, more or less, you kill a 5-wound hero every time you activate that ability. Right. So, yeah, I mean, the problem with it is obviously that's it. That's your ally. Right. Like that is at 380 now. That is the real deal, Holyfield. There ain't nothing else showing up besides that thing.
Yep.
I go back and forth on it. I'll tell you right now, it's certainly powerful. It can often feel like gilding the lily to me a little bit because it's so easy for this army when focused, right, to already be on like 2-up in most cases. I think my pick would be Lumi over Hurricanum as it stands now. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
It just leaves you space to get other utility into the army that you need. So
yeah, absolutely.
Like the Lumi and 2 Azeros fits.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, realistically, you might not, like, you probably have space in your hero regiment. Right. So like you might be able to shove 3 more heroes in there.
Yeah,
saying.
I mean, if you're running like a bird and a big bird and a general on foot, yeah,
exactly. Like, okay, just saying. That's a lot of like weird floating 3-up lantern dudes, who are pretty good against chaos, by the by.
Yep.
Deep to good. There's a fair amount of chaos around. You might have heard. Hot take. Some people are playing chaos. You heard it here first. You know, so being able to open a couple lanterns and burn the crap out of those guys for D6 mortal wounds, not shabby in the world of shabbiness. All right. Well, let's close it out then, gentlemen. Any final thoughts, Paul? Anything you want to leave everybody with on Free Peoples?
Can we talk about their weaknesses just
I
briefly?
mean, we did. But sure, sum up. What do you got, Tom? Hit their weaknesses.
Mobility obviously is one of those. Mortal wound protection, which isn't really unsurprising. But drops are a real issue for them.
Oh yeah,
like that's a thing. People who said that like the drop meta has went up, it really hasn't. It's just consolidated around a handful of battalions. The Seraphon Fangs of Sotek or whatever, the Change Host, the Murder Host, the Caradron can already get there without doing a battalion. The Sylvaneth still have a couple low drop options, or dropping off the table where it doesn't matter. And so you won't always get to pick your fights, and you won't always get to go first. And so that can be, that in my mind, that can be a deal breaker for competitive play.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That's definitely a big limitation.
Stormcast also have some 1-drops still.
I mean, I think that I still stand behind the statement. I think if you look at it in the aggregate, the average number of drops have gone up. But that doesn't mean the average applies to every individual force.
Right.
Right.
The top tables are still going to be very low drops.
But my point on that would be you have to deploy and play assuming you're not making the choice.
Yes.
You know, use it to your best advantage to make sure your pieces are in the best possible place to be reactive.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And to weather the storm, whatever that storm is.
Yeah, exactly.
Know what those big single drop Alpha Strike armies do and prepare accordingly.
Yeah, I don't think it's unmitigatable, but I think you have to play to mitigate.
Yeah, so here's a possibility. Here's one example of this. In those allies list, instead of running Vince's Luminarch and 2 Azeros, you run a Luminarch as in Azeros and 2 Gryphounds.
Sure.
You lean into the fact that that you can't stop that, but you can shore up some flanks.
Sure, absolutely. Prevents anybody from dropping anywhere near your flank, right? We already mentioned the archers earlier.
Yep.
And like their ability to sort of vanguard, right, and stuff like that. Yep. Another great defense tactic against that sort of thing, where you can do basically pre-game board control.
Yeah, and you also have a lot of space. One thing that that Anthony had brought up, or not Anthony, sorry, that had been asked earlier in the show, was on basing free guild. So do we know?
Will brought this up.
Will brought it up. Do we know what they ship on base size? Are they on 25s or 32s?
I have no idea.
On 25s.
Pretty sure they're on 25s.
So to answer Will's question, Will, you would put them on 25s because they come on 25s, not on 32s. By upscaling at that, technically you are cheating the system. I mean, you're as far as tournaments go, they want you to base things on what they came on. Sometimes there's ambiguity, like Plague Bearers come on both 25s and 32s right now. But in general, you need to base on what they technically come on now. This has bit me in the butt. I need to rebase my Marauders because I converted Blood Reavers, and I just assumed that all humans on 25s went to 32s because in general that happened. And in fact, I based them on 32s, and then I've now found out that my Reavers are on 32s, and Marauders got repackaged in 25 rounds, which was weird, but it happened. So you want to base on what they came on, and the reason why you would want 32s is exactly what we're about to talk about here, which is just area denial. One thing that you can do really well with an army of so many models is zone out entire areas from everything but the cheater armies. Because you can just literally push your models out when you have 100+ models on the table, such that you don't have zones where they can't drop. I was running a 70-some model, 60-some model army, 70-some model with my my Nurgle, and I could zone out my entire side of the table, so that anybody that with a 9 inches couldn't drop. Like I knew where to put things such that nobody could drop in my backfield, and I could even advance forward and still keep. I could zone out 2/3 of the table with 70+ models. So with 100+, you can definitely do this.
Yeah, and 100+ is also like an understatement. If you're going really heavy into a lot of Free Guild Guard and a lot of infantry in general, I mean, I've toyed around with lists that crack 200.
Yep.
And realistically, you can take if you run 2 units of guard with sword and shield at 40 guys, put them shoulder to shoulder across the 12-inch line, you have a wall across the entire board.
It's true.
With, might I add, a snake tail back to your general a few inches back.
Yep, that's good.
It's just a total pain in the ass to move all of that. If I know it's a thing that started to happen in Kings of War where the rounds are timed on chess timers instead of
movement trace.
That is an option. Yeah. But if we start getting timed on chess timers instead of like regular round timers, you're going to run out of time a lot just from having to move so many models around.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's ever going to happen in AOS.
I don't think so either. There's been some discussion of it. It's always good to play as fast as you can. You should know your army. You should know your rules. You should play as quickly as you responsibly can. But come on. I mean, it is what it is. So, all right, gentlemen. Paul, any closing thoughts on Free People?
They are a big investment to
time and money.
Time and money to actually get them on the table. I mean, a Free Guild Guard box is like $25 for 10, and you're fielding potentially like 200 models on the field. So
that's
pretty expensive.
That's nothing. Fireslayers are putting 120 on the table, and they're $60 for 10.
Yeah, right. So I mean, the time investment, of painting these guys is outrageous.
Yep.
And for all of the things that we've talked about, all of the abilities and combos and all of the ways that you can arrange things, what I would say this definitely seems to amount to in general is a very unforgiving army.
Yeah.
Right.
This is like a very experienced player with Free Guild is going to do much, much, much better than a newer player. Like, it's not like Stormcast. Stormcast, you do pretty well. They're a very forgiving army.
Right.
They do fairly well regardless of whose hands they're in. This, you're going to get completely wrecked if you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
Totally fair. I agree. A little bit more of a finesse force. You got to know it. You got to know how the pieces, anything where they're relying on synergy, heavy amounts of synergy, you really have to understand how your pieces work together, right? I mean, that's what it is. So,
yep.
Totally agree. All right. So with that, we come to a close. Paul, buddy, thank you for coming on. Certainly appreciate it. Good to talk Free Peoples with you. I'm sure we'll be back here doing this again. No doubt.
In another year and a half.
All right. But for all of you, thank you very much for watching. We certainly appreciate it. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.